the data on disk, right? And RDF is, if you like, another way of doing that, and then you can build schemas on top of that. So you can say, this column contains dates, or whatever, right? Or much more sophisticated. So I would say this, what we're proposing here is entirely complementary, and by the way, we do quite a lot of work with the semantic web people. So I would say RDF is about the APIs. It's about the schema. We're at the kind of a level behind that saying, we don't care what you've got. If you've got a bunch of Excel files, we can point at that. If you've got a bunch of RDF as triples, we can point at that. We don't get in at this point to the question of how you should format your data, whether it should be Excel, CSV, RDF. In general, I'd have a preference often for RDF or something more structured than Excel, but we're really Catholic. We're not getting into that fight, right? So that's what I would say is we're kind of a step above. Just like you don't care whether you're getting a program that's in C or in Ruby or in Python or in... Do you see what I mean? Does that make sense to your question?
It kind of, except that I feel that, I mean, because you're using the apt model all the time, which implies that you're going to download the data
onto your disk,
whereas linked open data is more a reference model.
Right, okay. So the answer to that is to say, when I said the really interesting thing with data is you don't always want to install it on your machine. You don't want a terabyte of data on your machine. You want to point to the API to that terabyte or to the RDF node for that data point or the Sparkle endpoint for that. So one thing that I think is definitely the case is that people want to install data packages which, if you like, are shells. They're a representation. Just as, if you like, in a slightly odd format, Debian or other systems have this when they have mock packages that stand in for any substitute. Here we want a shell that points to something remote. So we encapsulate, like we have packages which don't point to a tar.gz, but to a Sparkle API, right? But, okay.
So do you understand you correctly that it's basically more about searchability and putting metadata on existing data, not so much about finding and creating the data itself? So it's more like the meta directory of data out there.
Okay, yes and no. So, yes, you need things, and you need two pieces of metadata you never get through Google. So you need license information, and you need a download URL.
Yeah, I was thinking about there are directories like that out there, especially the scientific community has them and uses them. PubMed comes to mind.
Yeah, bioinformatics.
I guess if you put them in a more centralized position, you probably get more value out of them because they're not data islands. Sure.
But I think the second thing, so you're absolutely right. There are, so for example, we know quite a lot of people from the Sanger Institute, which do a lot of genomic work. And there are kind of things like there where they already have these things for like annotating the genome. We're starting to have listings of here are all the places, you know, people annotating this particular protein on that particular protein. But I think one of the things I think is also about building an ecosystem. So the point going back to Debian was it isn't just a registry. What it starts to coalesce around it is people who do this small intermediary role of the packaging, when you say of metadata, and checking putting it in some format. So be it, you know, converting to tar, you know, I don't know, it's in CSV, but it needs to be in RDF or something like that. So I think that's the other crucial point, is you need to coalesce around it some standardization on formats and other things, and creating the actual coherent set of stuff.
So you're also about filtering or combining data?
Yes, and doing some curating, maybe we say, curating.
Okay, thank you.
I have a suggestion and a question as well. I think you could save yourself tons of work by just porting or whatever the metadata of Project Gutenberg.
Gutenberg, okay.
Where texts where the license, where the copyright has expired, are collected. And, well, you've told us about 760 packages. Well, using that would raise that to a few tens of thousands of packages, I think. Maybe that could raise exposure. And the second thing is, I wonder what your actual scope is and how well the whole infrastructure scales. Because when you say data, it's anything between huge data sets of terabytes of data or a single picture or image. So where does it all end? And when you're getting down to data sets that are really that small, you cannot all, well, I think you cannot all register and maintain it in a, well, as humans, but rather you should, it should be done by machines. And at that point, you do nothing, nothing else than, for example, Google. And, well, I'm old enough to know web directories, and I know search engines, and, well, we both know where that story ended.
Sure.
And this seems like a dead end to me.
Okay. Really interesting. I mean, are you finished? I didn't know.
Yeah.
No, so I think really a good question to ask and to kind of critique. So I guess one thing is about, the first thing you said was like, are we reinventing the wheel? Like people have done this. So one answer is data package basically directly rips off, if you like, Debian, at least the metadata format and R and other ones, and also Python, the Python package index. I mean, our original idea was just to clone the Python package index pretty much directly. So we kind of have tried to minimize the reinvention of the wheel there, in that we're trying to do what already exists, but port it to data. You gave this question about Project Gutenberg. I don't know, I've actually done some stuff on a project we called Open Shakespeare. I mean, I like Project Gutenberg. I don't know that I'd want their metadata format over, let's say, Debian's, but I take your point that we should use something that exists. Your bigger question was about it just being automated. So my question I'd put to you back, and I don't know if this should become a dialogue, but is, it would seem to me that code is even more attractive to this than data, right? You know, if you're saying there's automated tools that will just do this stuff for us, why do we have all these human package managers around? Why is it that code, automated code, packaging up code doesn't happen already? And the same point goes, you're saying a question of how do we decide on scale? Our question at the moment is we wouldn't ask people to register individual photos or an individual book. We want something relatively coherent. But your question is a really good one. How do you decide? And the same problem happens in code stuff. People have to say, is this a single file worth putting on in Debian, or does it have to be Firefox or the Linux kernel? And there's some things which are a single bash file, you know, which lets you do word counts or something, and there's some stuff that's millions of lines of code. And so exactly the same question comes up. And it comes to a question of judgment is my only answer, which is why I think, at the moment at least, humans are definitely present in this process. And if all we were doing was a registry, I think all we were doing was a registry, that would be a bit pointless, I agree with you. But the hope is that we're building an ecosystem around that of people who maintain the data, or at least make sure it's registered and updated, and who use it to automatically install in their system or whatever. Do you see what I'm saying? It's not just Google plus a tag.
Yeah, that leads to another problem. Because when you have decided on that, even then the question remains that this whole directory is just an imposement of a hierarchy upon arbitrary data. And from my experience from Debian and apt and the like, I can say that hierarchy structures work well for maybe a few thousand packages. But when you're coming to tens of thousands of packages, this doesn't work at all. And there's this internal project within Debian, deb tags, for what we've seen, tagging packages. But even if it were complete, which it isn't, nobody tells us really how to really search for these kinds of things, how to combine different tags to really find what you're looking for. And these are all unsolved questions, and all you're doing right now is another directory of stuff that already exists in a kind of taxonomy that you have thought up on the spot, more or less. And I don't think this can in any way keep up with the dynamic nature of data today, data in the future, and I think only machines have a realistic chance to have a shot at really categorizing data, making data accessible in any meaningful way.
Okay, so I kind of agree with you, I think, maybe, which is that I'm pretty sure a hand-maintained list is